Hello there, and welcome to Dream Myths. Tonight, we'll journey to ancient Greece, where gods and mortals cross paths in extraordinary ways. But first, let's settle comfortably, allowing your body to sink into the mattress. Take a deep breath in and exhale, fully releasing the day's tension. Feel a wave of relaxation starting at your toes, gradually flowing upwards with each breath. This calming wave rises higher through your legs, your hips, your torso. Your arms grow heavy, your shoulders drop away from your ears, your neck and jaw soften. Your forehead smooths out. Each breath deepens this state of relaxation, making your body feel heavier and your mind quieter. Let go of any need to think or plan. Simply allow yourself to be here, drifting peacefully as you prepare to enter the world of tonight's story. At a place called Anthedon, opposite Euboea, there was a secluded beach where the white sand formed a perfect crescent between the meadows and the sea. Though the fishermen who inhabited that part of the country sailed their ships up and down the coast, none had ever stepped onto that beach. Even from a distance, they could feel that there was something strange about it, something not quite right. It was nothing you could pin down. Perhaps the breeze was a little too still. The colors a little too intense. Perhaps the waves that broke against the sand seemed to pull back a little too quickly. It was certainly true that the animals who can sense things, no man ever can avoid at the place. No cattle or sheep grazed in the meadows. Even the bees passed over the flowers. At the end of the day, there was nothing you could put your finger on, but enchantment has its own peculiar smell, and the beach at Anthedon stank of it. But one evening, a fisherman returning home anchored his boat and came ashore to count the fish he had taken on his nets that day. His name was Glaucus, a young, cheerful man who feared nothing. He was in a good mood. It had been a hard day's work, but laying his fish in the sand, he could see that it was an excellent catch. 6 snappers, twice as many mullet, and a prime swordfish lay stretched out in front of him. A movement caught his eye. Was it his imagination, or had the tail of the swordfish twitched? He blinked, then shook his head. The fish had been out of the water for an hour. It was impossible. It twitched again. Then a couple of mullet flipped over. He looked more closely at his catch. All the fish had miraculously returned to life. Even as he sat there with a reed that he had plucked from the beach clasped between his teeth, the fish began to wiggle back to the sea. He was too surprised to stop them. Often He had been told that Anthedon was enchanted, and now that he saw it with his own eyes, he was more astonished than afraid. Only when the last fish had disappeared into the sea and he realized he had lost his entire catch did he grit his teeth in vexation. Breaking the reed, sap squirted into his mouth. He felt it on his tongue tasting of honey. Before he could stop himself, he had swallowed it. Great heavens, he muttered. His heart began to beat faster and faster, and it felt as if his clothes were squeezing him to death. With scrabbling fingers he tore them off until he stood naked on the beach. But now the sand burnt his feet, and the sun, though low in the sky, beat down on him. He turned and looked at the sea. Oh, how inviting the water was! How he longed to lose himself in its cool embrace. Despite his discomfort, he couldn't help laughing. "Goodbye, world," he cried. "You and I must part company." And he dived into the water. Glaucus did not drown. As he sank further and further away from the air and the sun, he found, and it was a very agreeable surprise, that he could breathe. Strangely, he felt at one with the element. It was like flying. He wasn't exactly wet, as he would never again be exactly dry. The surface of the ocean was his sky, the seabed his land, and he somersaulted between them, silent bubbles of laughter erupting from his mouth. He felt like a different man, and a different man was just what he was. For the sap had transformed him in more ways than one. His beard, once light brown, was now a rusty green. His hair had more than doubled in length, flowing over his shoulders that were suddenly much broader than they had ever been on land. His arms were dark blue, more peculiar than all of these metamorphoses put together. His legs had somehow fused as one, becoming a fish's tail just around where the hips should have been. But a fish's tail was certainly a great deal more useful than two ungainly feet, as Glaucus soon found out. The merest flick could propel him at speeds along the seabed, and by twisting it he could dodge the coral and zigzag through the dunes. So began his life under the sea. In the weeks that followed, he was introduced to the sea gods Oceanus and Tethys, who welcomed him to their world. He rode on the back of dolphins, reveling in their laughter as they raced across the surface of the sea. He discovered caves where fishes more beautiful than he had ever seen hid from the nets of fishermen. He met the oceanids, the 3,000 nymphs of the ocean, and joined in their feasting, and he fell in love with Scylla. Scylla was a nymph of the sea who had come to the aid of sailors in distress. She was the loveliest creature he had ever seen. either in the water or on land. He came upon her in a sunlit grotto where she was sitting on a rock, combing her long fair hair. Though her shape was that of a human, she was no larger than a young girl. Her eyes were of a color caught somewhere between hazel and green. Her lips were full, her whole body lithe and graceful. Glaucus swam towards her, then lay where the water was, at its most shallow, propping himself against the rock. She saw him. He smiled. She screamed and dropped her comb. What monster are you?" she cried. "Monster?" Glaucus scratched his head. "I'm no monster, lady. My name is Glaucus. Don't let these blue arms of mine and all the rest of it put you off. Once I was a mortal, a fisherman. Now I'm sort of a merman, and the sea is my home. The gods themselves have made me welcome, and may the gods bless them for it. Now the thing is, I couldn't help noticing you sitting here, and the thing is, well, I was wondering, you see, if..." Glaucus had gone very red, but even as he spoke, Scylla had turned her back on him and run off into the forest. And then for the first time in a long time, Glaucus was sad. He could not understand why Scylla should have rejected him so cruelly, even if his advances had been somewhat inept. What he did not know was that Scylla, rejoicing rather too much in her own beauty, rejected everybody. She had not yet found a man good enough for her in her own eyes, and she did not care how she let her admirers know it. But Glaucus was not to be put off so easily. He had seen her only once, but he knew that he could never forget her nor rest until she had accepted him. Now he turned and swam to the island of Aea, for he had heard tell of a powerful sorceress called Circe who lived there, and he needed her help. This was the same Circe whom Odysseus would one day encounter on his wanderings after the Trojan War. The daughter of the sun god Helios, she was a proud and mysterious goddess skilled in every type of magic, but never to be trusted. She lived in a palace in the middle of a thick forest of oak trees, where wolves and lions prowled, and not all of them had begun their lives as animals, for Circe delighted in feeding her guests potions that might turn them into a wolf or a lion or something worse. Glaucus came to her as she sat on the shore of her island, her eyes on the horizon dreaming of secret things. "Great Circe," he cried, "I am only a humble man. Well, not exactly a man as you can see, but humble all the same. I come to you for help. I know you're busy, but this won't take long. That is, if you agree to help me." Then Circe smiled, for Glaucus's looks pleased her, as did his rough and awkward manner. "Speak on, little sea creature," she said. "What can I do for you?" "Well, it's like this, Your Majesty. I am in love with a Nereid. But the thing is, she isn't exactly mad about me. No. What I was hoping was that you could fix me up with some sort of potion, magic herbs or something. You want me to cure you of your love?" Circe interrupted. "Why? No. No. That's the last thing I want. No. It's for her. I want her to fall in love with me." Circe looked at Glaucus thoughtfully. "If, as you say, this Nereid has rejected you," she said, "then perhaps you should forget her. Would it not be more sensible to search for a woman who loves you as much as you might learn to love her? Someone like myself, for example. I may be a goddess, but I live alone on this island. There is much I could offer you if you were to—" "Oh no," Glaucus burst in. "Begging your pardon and your highness, but that wouldn't do at all. I mean, no offense, but really. You should forget this Nereid of yours," Circe snapped. "I can't," Glaucus replied. "Leaves will grow in the sea and seaweed on the mountain tops before my feelings for Scylla change." "Very well," Circe said. And if Glaucus had been looking more carefully, he would have seen two flames suddenly smolder in her eyes. "I will prepare you a potion that will change your Scylla." "You will," Glaucus exclaimed in delight. "Oh yes, it will change her. Wait for me here." And with these enigmatic words, Circe swept away, disappearing into the darkness of the forest. She returned an hour later, carrying a small leather bag. "Take the contents of this pouch," she said, "and sprinkle them in the water where your Scylla likes to swim. Inside, there are certain roots over which I have chanted magic spells. Sprinkle them in the water and leave the place at once. I think the results will impress you." "Thank you, thank you," Glaucus said and took the bag. "I will never forget you." "No," Circe said, "you will never forget me." Scylla had a favorite pool on the island, a pool fed by a stream that flowed from a spring where the water was sweet and cool. This was where she would come at the height of the sun to rest. Glaucus found the pool and emptied the bag of ugly black roots into the water. They hissed and sputtered as they touched the surface. But Glaucus, blinded by his all-consuming passion, paid no heed. Soon after Scylla arrived, she did not notice that the water looked oddly cloudy, but she found it cool and refreshing. and she plunged in. After a refreshing swim, she came ashore and laid on the beach in the Sunday. Before she knew it, she was fast asleep. She was woken by a low growling at her feet. When she opened her eyes, she saw a ferocious dog standing over her. Its eyes were like two hot coals, its teeth like razors. She looked again and saw not one, but 6 dogs surrounding her, all snarling and slavering. They were no ordinary dogs. Their eyes bulged from their heads, their skin was pitch black and hairless, their teeth were like a shark's. Scylla screamed and scrambled to her feet, but something was holding her back. As she tried to pull away, she discovered to her horror that the 6 dogs were a part of her. They were growing out of her waist. She was standing on 24 legs and had horrible heads sprouting from around her waist like a grotesque spider's legs. A sound drifted on the wind from far away on the island of Aea, the sound of a woman laughing. Circe laughed because she knew that she had succeeded in her revenge on Glaucus for his rejection of her. Scylla remained where she was, forevermore half woman, half monster. And as the years went by, sailors came to fear her, for she had no control over the dogs that would tear travelers limb from limb before dragging them down to the ocean depths. Glaucus's memory of Scylla and her rejection faded, and his cheerful nature returned to him as he swam away from the scene of her terrible fate. He went away to seek his fortune in the furthermost parts of the sea, and he never again went near the island of Aea. His love for Scylla had been a fleeting fancy. Circe's hatred for him was a forever thing, a forever curse on the thing that he had loved the most. And so his lesson was learned. True love is not about possession, and those who use it for selfish gain will ultimately be the ones who suffer the greatest loss of all. Glaucus was not the only hero to suffer a terrible fate at the hands of the gods. Zeus, the king of all the gods, was not a faithful husband, and he and his wife Hera argued often. Usually, the cause of their arguments was some young woman or other that Zeus had taken a fancy to, and it was these poor women who always ended up suffering the most. Zeus had fallen in love with a beautiful nymph called Io, and to protect her from his wife's jealous rage, he turned her into a snow-white cow. But Hera was not so easily fooled, and she took the cow, capturing her and having her guarded by a fearsome monster named Argus. Argus was a strange creature with a large, lumpy head and a body covered in hair. He was the perfect guard for he had 100 eyes scattered all over his face and head, and though he would sleep, he would do so with only 2 eyes at a time. Thus, he was never fully asleep, and Io's suffering and her existence as a cow was without end. Zeus eventually decided that Io had suffered enough, and he sent his son Hermes, the messenger god, to kill Argus and rescue her. Hermes was the god of mischief and cunning, but he knew he could not sneak up on the watchful Argus, for at least 2 of his 100 eyes would always be open. Instead, Hermes came up with a clever plan. He approached Argus boldly, carrying a set of panpipes. As he drew closer, he began to play a gentle, hypnotic melody. The sound of the pipes delighted Argus, who had never heard such music before. His many eyes lit up with curiosity, and he set aside his vigilance for a moment. "What is that wonderful music?" he asked. "And what is that strange instrument?" Hermes smiled, knowing his plan was working. The music was a weapon, subtle and sweet, that began to disarm the monster's defenses from the inside out. It was the first crack in Argus's 100-eyed armor. They are called pan-pipes, Hermes explained, named after a very dear friend of mine, a half-goat fellow called Pan. He was a god of shepherds and herds who lived on the slopes of Mount Menalus. Argus, already feeling the soporific effects of the gentle music, asked Hermes to tell him the story. And as Hermes began to speak of Pan, 15 of Argus's 100 eyes began to droop, then closed. Hermes spoke of Pan's strange shape, a man from the waist up, but a goat from the waist down, with hairy legs, a tail, hooves, and goat's ears. He was always laughing, singing, and dancing, but he was quick to anger, and woe betide any mortal who woke him from his afternoon nap, for he would give them nightmares for weeks. Argus found the details a little boring, so another 27 of his eyes closed, and the music of the pipes became a little more insistent, a little more hypnotic. Hermes continued. Pan was a lusty god and delighted in chasing girls through the fields and forests. The girls would scream in mock terror, but secretly they were flattered and would not run too fast. There was one exception, however. A beautiful nymph and huntress named Syrinx. She was a follower of the goddess Artemis and lived a life of chastity and dedication to the hunt. Argus thought to himself, will he ever get to the point? And another 24 of his eyes closed. The total now stood at 66. Hermes' voice became a soft lullaby as he described how Syrinx screamed and ran for for 6 long hours when she first saw Pan chasing her. Forgetting all his other conquests, Pan thought her to be the most enchanting creature he had ever seen. He finally cornered her at the edge of a wide river where she could go no further, and her escape was blocked. Argus didn't care about the story anymore, and a further 17 eyes closed. Syrinx called out to the water nymphs to protect her, and they heard her desperate plea. Just as Pan was about to grab her, she vanished, and all that remained in his hands was a handful of marsh reeds. As Pan stood there in disappointment, a gust of wind blew through the reeds, creating a sad, beautiful sound like music. A smile returned to Pan's face, and he cut the reeds of different lengths, fastening them together with wax to create the first panpipes, a testament to his lost love. Now, only 2 of Argus's eyes remained open, and they too began to close. A moment later, all 100 eyes were shut, and the monster was fast asleep. Hermes seized the opportunity he had been waiting for, and with one swift blow of his sword he killed Argus. With the monster dead, Hermes went into the cave and rescued Io, though her troubles were far from over. Hera was furious at the death of her faithful servant, and as a final act of cruel retribution, she took Argus's 100 eyes and used them to decorate the feathers of her favorite bird, the peacock. And so, the monster's unblinking vigilance became a haunting, beautiful pattern, a constant reminder of Hera's unyielding anger.